behind me is, well, it's not Crash Bandicoot, it's actually Uncharted 4 running on Steam Deck. When it first came out on PlayStation 4, Uncharted 4 delighted players with just how incredible the graphics were. We're talking environments, character models, textures and animations, everything like that. And these days, thanks to Legacy of Thieves collection, we can actually play it on Steam Deck. How does it run? Let's find out. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. That's right, today we're going to be talking about Uncharted 4 A Thief's End. Should you play it on Steam Deck? Now you can get this as part of the Legacy of Thieves collection on Steam, which contains both Uncharted 4 and Uncharted The Lost Legacy. To do it justice though, I wanted to give Uncharted 4 its own video, so we'll only be talking about that part of the collection today, and then if there's enough interest, I'll look at The Lost Legacy another time. First things first, this is a big game. It comes in at over 100 gigabyte download, so if you don't have a lot of space on your Steam Deck, then I think it's worth knowing you might have to uninstall some other games to fit this on. On the plus side though, when booting up this game, thankfully Sony doesn't have any kind of launcher. It does have to build shaders the first time that you play, but you know, it didn't take too long and I haven't had to do it again since. Also good news is that I don't think you are forced to create a PlayStation account to play this game if you don't already have one. The reason that I say I don't think you need a PlayStation account to log into is that actually I was already logged in when I booted up Uncharted 4. I've played Sony games before on Steam Deck, so my accounts are already linked, but when I look on the Steam page, there's nothing in there about you actually specifically needing to have an account signed in. There's something about you needing to agree to an EULA, but nothing specifically about a PlayStation account. And just for comparison, here is the page for Helldivers 2, which does require a PlayStation account, so you can see the difference. So it's nice and easy to get into the game. Now let's talk about performance. By default on Steam Deck, it sets the graphics to medium and it looks really good on the Steam Deck screen, and it performs reasonably well at those medium settings, 40 to 50 frames in those opening levels. Cutscenes look incredible. The characters' faces I honestly think are unmatched even today. It's really a strong start when you first begin playing this game. I want to stop here though and just say that I think the performance of the opening levels of Uncharted 4 can be a little bit misleading for the performance for the rest of the game. And the reason for that is that these initial levels are quite contained as compared to the later ones. You start off with a level on a boat, and then the rest of the opening levels are a combination of rooftop flashbacks, Nathan's normal life, prison, and a villa. And these levels seem to be less demanding. Like I said, they're contained, they're a little bit more on rails, and so the performance is great on these default medium settings. The only thing that I had to change was I turned up the brightness a bit. The game can be quite dark at times, but I didn't change anything else to start with. Now, during these opening levels, I actually even tried turning the graphics settings up at one point, all the way up to ultra, and I just couldn't believe that it runs. You definitely lose frames. It ran between 30 to 40, but I was just amazed that I was playing Uncharted 4 on ultra settings on a handheld PC. I was starting to think that no developer had any excuse anymore. If these guys got Uncharted to do this, then why weren't all games looking this amazing and running this good? Now, don't get too excited though, because things are about to change a little bit. This performance lasts all the way up until about chapter 8, and it's at this point that the level design in Uncharted 4 really starts to open up. You are still going in the direction that the game wants you to go, but the levels get much bigger. There are more ways to get to where you need to go, and the environments are a lot more detailed. They're not just backdrops anymore, but they're actual locations that you often end up reaching, and importantly, there are no traditional loading screens. I'm sure the game must be loading somehow at some point, but you can go through multiple chapters of this game without ever seeing a proper loading screen. In terms of game design, this is brilliant, but it definitely comes at a cost. So take this level for example. This is chapter 8, which I mentioned earlier. In this level, you're on the cliffs in Scotland. There's rain, there's snow, and there's a lot of grass being rendered at the same time, and the grass actually moves as you walk through it. So there's a lot going on here, and in the distance you can actually see, you know, a church, some ruins, and that's not a backdrop, that's part of the level. You will go there within the next sort of hour or so of gameplay, and there won't be any traditional loading screens between now and when you actually reach it. This level is the first one that I noticed where the Steam Deck starts to struggle. On the higher tiers of graphics settings, there are places where you start to dip beneath 30 frames, and it can change as quickly as just turning the camera around. This level, for example, you're driving a truck around, and as you pan the camera around, you can see the frame rate vary a lot, and this is actually on the lowest graphics settings, the gameplay I'm showing right now. Now, you can switch graphics settings quite quickly on the fly, and the game doesn't require a restart, even if you're swapping between low and ultra, but as I went through, and as you get further through these bigger levels, I found more and more that I had to lower the graphics. And so in the end, I just stopped switching, and I just started to play everything on low. On those more demanding levels, you could actually often get a frame rate in the mid 40s to 50s on low, but the trouble is that when things get really demanding, it does drop down quite a bit, but low stays above 30, which is why I ended up settling on it. The scene that I'm showing right now is one of the most famous scenes from Uncharted 4, and that is the car chase. It's loads of fun, but there really is a lot happening on screen all at once. You're racing through the streets, there's lots of debris flying around, there's cars chasing you, there's bullets flying, and you can see that the Steam Deck is managing to hold its frame rate at sort of around that 30 to 35 FPS mark, but this is on low, so you're not really going to be able to turn the graphics settings up much higher than this and still maintain some decent performance. Now, just in case you want to write the game off because I suggested playing on low, let me reassure you that it still looks incredible even on these lowest graphics settings. I don't really think that my YouTube video will do it justice because of compression, and you're probably going to be watching this on a bigger screen, but Uncharted 4 looks incredible even at low settings when playing on that 800p screen. You might occasionally see some strange textures, you know, if every now and then there's a bit of fire that looks a bit weird, but the levels and the characters still look extremely good, as do the cutscenes, and I've been more than happy playing through this game even on low. Not to mention there are times when the OLED screen really shines through as well if you've got one of those. There's some really nice and sunny levels that are bright and they look great with that OLED screen. The other good thing about those low settings is it helps your battery life. It keeps it above that 2-hour mark, and it also helps keep the fan nice and quiet too. I noticed that when I was playing on high graphics settings, the fans would often go crazy, but on low, yeah, sure, the fans are running, but they're kind of running at that, you know, consistently, not too fast, and it's nice and quiet most of the time. Unfortunately, this does mean that I don't think this game is a good candidate for playing docked at 1080p. The frame rate is just not consistent at all, even on the lowest settings at 800p, so, you know, this game is just a bit too demanding to play on Steam Deck at 1080p. Now, keep in mind this is all with native resolution. The game does have FSR if you're interested in that, but, you know, even on a handheld, I really try not to use FSR if I can get away with it. I don't think it's as good as DLSS, and there's noticeable fuzziness to textures that gets introduced when using it. And, you know, to me, if the choice is between playing on low at 40 frames or playing high at 40 frames with FSR, well, I think that most of the time FSR kind of cancels out the benefits of the high graphics settings anyway. It's not for me, but the option is there if you want it. So I mentioned earlier in the video that once you've done the initial load from the main menu, there's not really a lot of loading left in the game. You don't really notice any loading screens. There's nothing traditional to stop you, anything like that. That does mean that the first load that you do is pretty long. I mean, this behind me is not exaggerated. I've not slowed this down. This is just generally how long it takes to load. Now, that would be maybe a bit of an annoying trade-off, but with the Steam Deck, the great thing is that you can skip all that loading by just putting the game to sleep and then resuming from where you left off without having to relaunch, go through that main menu and load it all up again. One last thing that I want to mention on the technical portion of the video, I never had any crashes, and there was only one bug that I encountered, which is where sometimes you'll be in a cutscene at the end of a level and the cutscene will transition to a new location. You know, the characters will be talking about where they're going next, and then the cutscene skips the traveling portion and it fades in and the characters are in the new location. Weirdly, for a few seconds during that transition, the game does seem to slow down a bit and things get a lot choppier. It's not a huge problem because it only happens occasionally. It's not like every cutscene has that transition, but I still thought I would include it in the video. So that's the technical section of this video pretty much wrapped up. Now, performance is a little bit mixed here on the Steam Deck playing Uncharted 4, but I'm pleased to say that even on low, the game still looks great on the OLED, and on low you can get a pretty decent performance through the game. It's just a little bit of a shame that you can't really turn those graphics settings up at all, because then you'll sort of probably be dipping to below 30 FPS. The question is though, is that trade-off worth it? Is Uncharted 4 actually any fun? Now, Uncharted 4 is the type of game that sadly we don't seem to be getting that many of these days. This is a game where you're treasure hunting, racing across the world to all of these different locations, discovering ancient clues and puzzles to solve. Something like Tomb Raider or the recent Indiana Jones are probably the best examples of other games with a similar feel to this, but like I said, there aren't that many these days, and I think that's a shame because Uncharted 4 is so much fun. This entry in particular sees Nathan Drake come out of retirement to help his brother Sam, who's long presumed dead, and they're trying to find the lost treasure of Henry Avery. Gameplay is There's a mix of exploration, climbing, puzzle solving, and plenty of action in the form of third-person shooting. So is it any fun? Well, I'm just going to put it out there straight away that Uncharted 4 and the Uncharted series in general are some of the best games that I've ever played. It doesn't really have any downsides to me. Every aspect of the game is top tier in my opinion. The writing, the combat, the visuals, the story, they're all incredible. It's so easy to get swept up in the adventure of this game and you'll have a blast doing it. The gameplay is some of the smoothest that I've played in any game. Traversing through the levels, climbing, swinging on ropes, it all comes together really nicely. It feels really good. There are actually often quite long climbing sections, which I think in another game might start to grate a little bit, but here they don't get boring, especially when from time to time there'll be parts that go wrong. You know, Nathan might fall or nearly fall, and it keeps it exciting. As you adventure, you'll come across clues and puzzles that you need to solve in order to continue your treasure hunt. They're all contained in this diary and they're really well put together. I don't normally actually really like puzzles in games very much, but these feel different. They're not too hard, but they're not too easy, and they're a bit more exciting to me than normal puzzles because, I mean, you know, it's an ancient test to find treasure, and that's just got a cool factor to it that, you know, not that many other puzzles have. Generally, the combat is really good to get into. It's really smooth. The gunplay feels really good. The only exception to that is that reload is on Y by default, and that threw me for a little bit. It took a little bit of time to get used to. I'm more used to reload being on X or square, depending on which controller you're playing. And there's also a good variety of guns to play with as you progress through the game. Pistols and assault rifles are the most common, but as you go through the levels, you'll also find things like shotguns, grenade launchers, and sniper rifles. The combat does also merge into the exploration quite a bit. Often you're fighting on cliff tops or dangerous ledges, and you can run and gun, you can jump across rooftops, you know, swing from a rope mid-combat, you can land on your opponent and hit them. If you get close to an enemy, there is that hand-to-hand combat, and while this is pretty good, what I really like are the animations when one of your allies is trying to punch the same bad guy as you, and you do a bit of a combo attack to take them down. The combat is honestly just loads of fun, and there's plenty of set pieces as well to wow you, both in terms of exploration but also in terms of action. I mentioned earlier in the video one of the most famous sequences from this game, the big car chase, and it's so much fun racing through the streets, and then when you finally catch up to the convoy, you know, you're jumping from vehicle to vehicle to try to save Sam. This is one of the highlights for sure, but there are plenty of others like this. And the whole game looks incredible. The environments, the lighting, the world, sometimes even the characters just stop to take in a scene, and I found myself doing the same thing. Character models are one of the highlights of the graphics on this game, even on Steam Deck and even now nearly 10 years later. The details in their faces look incredible, and that comes through in cutscenes, and it really helps to elevate those cutscenes beyond pretty much most other games that I can think of. Of course, graphics aren't everything in a game, but the extra detail in the characters' faces, I think it really helps to sell the emotions and what they're feeling in a scene, and it just makes the characters a bit more believable. If you're into it, Uncharted 4 has loads of collectibles that you can go after, and the game has a chapter select feature so that you can go back and forth to chase after those ones that you've missed. But another great feature that I discovered on this playthrough is that not only is there a chapter select, but there's also an encounter select, so you can actually go in and choose a specific fight or set piece that you want to play again. I actually think this is great. If you have certain moments that you really enjoy and you just want to play that scene again, then you know you can do that. I've not actually noticed this feature in other games before, and it's a really good way, I think, to respect the player's time. You can let them go back to the exact moment that they want and not force them to go through other parts of the game to get there. So one other question that I wanted to address is, should you play this game if you haven't played any of the others in the series? I think that you can, and I think you'd have a great experience with the game, but I just think that you would have a better time if you've already played 1, 2, and 3. This game is Nathan's swan song. There's loads of references and callbacks to the previous games, returning characters, and I just think that the story will have more impact in the context of the full series. Unfortunately, they are only available on PlayStation, but I do think that it's worth it to play these if you can. If you really can't play those, or maybe you just want to jump straight into Uncharted 4, then it does at least do a good job of explaining who everyone is, what's happened in the past, so you won't be lost at all during the story, so that is an option too. So there we go. I hope that helps you to answer the question, should you play Uncharted 4 on Steam Deck? You do have to turn the graphics down a bit to play it on its handheld, but I've been having a great time playing this again, and I think it's just so much fun even on those lower graphics settings. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know what you think of Uncharted 4 down in the comments. If you've been following this channel for a while, you might have noticed a few changes. I have got myself a green screen and a new microphone to give me a few different options when it comes to making videos, and I hope you liked it. Let me know what you think. I'm still sort of getting to grips with it, so it might change as things go along. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.